Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I'm an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. It seemed as though another emotional storm had swept through the lives of the young generation on the Bold and the Beautiful, and at the center of it all stood Electra Forrester. In a dramatic burst of frustration, she threw her necklace directly into Will Spencer's face before storming away with R.J. Forrester, convinced that she had been deeply wronged. The moment was designed to feel heartbreaking, but for many longtime viewers, it landed very differently. Instead of mourning the collapse of Will and Electra's relationship, countless fans felt as though Will had just been handed an unexpected opportunity to finally free himself from a romance that had become increasingly exhausting. Even though Will ended the latest episode desperately shouting Electra's name with the kind of over-the-top desperation that reminded many viewers of an old Hollywood melodrama, there is a growing belief that chasing after her would be the worst possible decision he could make. The expectation is that Will may eventually swallow his pride, chase after Electra, and beg her to come back. But if that is truly where the story is headed, many fans believe it would only drag him back into the very cycle that has caused him nothing but frustration. In fact, there are plenty of viewers who would rather see Will move on with almost anyone else, whether that means giving Melissa Dillon a real chance, finding someone completely new, or jokingly imagining even the impossible becoming a better option than returning to Electra. The overwhelming feeling is simple. Will deserves someone who brings peace into his life instead of constant emotional chaos. The first major reason so many people believe Will should never reunite with Electra revolves around the issue that ultimately drove them apart. Looking back at everything that happened involving Hope Logan, Logan's secret plans, the Blue Diamond, and the jewelry line, it becomes increasingly obvious why Will chose to remain silent. Electra acted offended that he never warned her about what Logan was planning, insisting that the Forresters must think she was a fool because she had been left in the dark. Yet beneath her complaints was something far more troubling. The way she expressed her anger strongly suggested that, had she known those confidential plans ahead of time, she would have rushed straight to the Forrester family with the information. Instead of respecting Will's loyalty to his own family and the company he represents, she appeared upset that she had been denied the opportunity to reveal those secrets herself. That completely changes the emotional weight of the argument, because it no longer becomes about honesty in a relationship, it becomes about divided loyalties. Will was never obligated to hand over confidential business information simply because Electra happened to be his girlfriend, especially when they worked for rival companies. Rather than appreciating the difficult position he was in, Electra minimized the seriousness of protecting confidential information, brushing it aside with dismissive comments about trade secrets, as though safeguarding a company's future somehow didn't matter. To Will, those secrets represented trust, responsibility, and loyalty to his family, while Electra seemed to treat them as little more than an inconvenience standing between her and the Forresters. From that perspective, many fans believe Will's decision to keep quiet wasn't an act of betrayal at all. It was proof that he made exactly the right choice. As the relationship continued to unravel, another painful contradiction surfaced, exposing what many viewers consider one of Electra's greatest flaws. During the time when she and Will had briefly separated, Will admitted that Dillon had kissed him. When Electra confronted him about whether anything had happened, he chose honesty, even though telling the truth risked making everything worse between them. He could have hidden the kiss, but instead, he respected Electra enough to tell her exactly what had happened. Ironically, at almost that very same time, Electra had been sharing kisses with R.J. Forrester herself. Even more damaging was the timing, because those moments with R.J. occurred while she and Will were actively discussing the possibility of getting back together. Yet, despite demanding complete honesty from Will, Electra never extended that same honesty in return. She concealed her own actions while expecting absolute transparency from him, creating a painful double standard that many fans found impossible to ignore. Her criticism of Will suddenly rang hollow because she had judged him for behavior that she herself had already engaged in. It became a relationship built on unequal expectations, where Will was expected to confess everything while Electra conveniently kept her own secrets buried. To many viewers, that wasn't simply hypocrisy, it was a clear sign that the trust between them had already been broken beyond repair. That growing imbalance became even more obvious whenever RJ entered the picture. Time and again, Electra consistently chose RJ's side over Will's, creating the impression that her loyalty had quietly shifted long before their relationship officially fell apart. Throughout everything that happened, RJ repeatedly interfered in Will's life, including his efforts to have Will pushed out of Forrester Creations. Many fans remained convinced that RJ played a major role in Will ultimately losing his position. Yet Electra never once held him accountable for any of it. She never challenged him, never criticized his behavior, and never questioned whether he had crossed the line. Instead, all of her disappointment, frustration, and emotional pressure seemed reserved exclusively for Will. Every mistake Will made became a major issue, while RJ was somehow spared from similar scrutiny. The dynamic became increasingly frustrating because RJ constantly portrayed Electra as someone who needed rescuing, showering her with endless praise while presenting her as a perpetual victim who deserved protection. Rather than discouraging that behavior, Electra appeared to welcome it, allowing RJ to become deeply involved in a relationship that should have remained between her and Will. Even after Ivy Forrester was no longer around to complicate matters, RJ's influence only continued to grow, making it seem as though Electra had quietly chosen him emotionally long before she physically walked away from Will. At that point, many fans began wondering whether Will should simply let RJ have the relationship altogether and focus on building a happier future somewhere else. Watching RJ's behavior only reinforced that belief. He seemed to insert himself into every disagreement between Will and Electra, acting less like an outside observer and more like someone convinced he had every right to control the outcome. Walking into Will's home without knocking, immediately stirring up conflict, and treating Electra as though she were constantly trapped in some terrible crisis painted an uncomfortable picture. Rather than respecting boundaries, RJ repeatedly behaved as if he alone understood what was best for Electra, while Will was painted as the villain no matter what he did. Together, RJ and Electra increasingly projected an air of entitlement that became difficult for many viewers to overlook. Every disagreement somehow transformed into another opportunity for Electra to portray herself as the injured party, while RJ eagerly stepped in to reinforce that narrative. Instead of encouraging healthy communication or personal accountability, their dynamic seemed to reward emotional overreactions, leaving Will trapped in an impossible situation where he could never seem to win. The more the relationship unfolded, the clearer it became that Will wasn't simply dating Electra, he was constantly competing against RJ's influence as well. Perhaps the most exhausting part of the entire relationship, however, was the emotional pattern that seemed destined to repeat itself forever. Electra consistently approached every setback as though the world had singled her out unfairly, slipping almost automatically into a mindset where she became the victim regardless of the circumstances. Whether she was upset because Will showed kindness to Dylan or angry that things failed to unfold exactly the way she wanted, her reactions frequently escalated into dramatic confrontations that left everyone else scrambling to make peace. One memorable example came when she expected Will to push Dylan aside so completely that Dylan would effectively be left with nowhere to go, all because Electra viewed simple compassion as some kind of personal betrayal. Instead of recognizing Will's kindness, she transformed it into another reason to accuse him of failing her. If Will were to convince Electra to return now, many viewers believe nothing fundamental would actually change. The apologies would eventually fade, another disagreement would inevitably emerge, and before long, Will would once again find himself apologizing, pleading, and desperately trying to repair damage that wasn't entirely his responsibility. Rather than creating a relationship built on mutual trust and respect, their future would likely become an endless cycle of emotional damage, followed by temporary reconciliation, only to repeat all over again. As if those concerns were not serious enough already, another complication now looms over Will's future: his own family. Katie Logan is expected to learn everything that happened, including Electra's furious reaction after discovering that Will had protected Logan's confidential plans instead of sharing them with her. It is difficult to imagine Katie responding with anything other than complete support for her son, because from her perspective, Will did exactly what any trustworthy employee and loyal family member should have done. Electra was never entitled to know Logan's confidential strategies simply because she happened to be dating Will, especially when her loyalty ultimately belongs to a competing company. Will himself already pointed out the obvious contradiction. If the situations had been reversed, would Electra have willingly revealed every confidential Forrester plan to him? Few people genuinely believe she would have. Once Bill Spencer learns about the situation, the stakes may become even higher. Bill has always expected loyalty where family business is concerned, and after seeing how strongly Electra reacted to being excluded, he may begin questioning whether Will can safely remain involved with someone whose loyalties appear divided. Trusting Will with sensitive company information is one thing, but trusting Electra not to pass that information along to Steffi Forrester or Ridge Forrester becomes a completely different matter altogether. From Bill and Katie's perspective, that uncertainty alone could become reason enough to encourage their son to walk away before even greater problems develop. In the end, everything points toward one unavoidable conclusion. Rather than chasing after Electra, begging for forgiveness, and restarting a relationship filled with emotional imbalance, many fans believe Will should simply accept that this chapter has ended and move forward with his life. Soap viewers across social media have increasingly voiced the opinion that Will deserves someone who values honesty, loyalty, and mutual respect instead of constant conflict. Melissa Dillon has emerged as one of the most popular possibilities because many believe she would stand by Will without creating the endless drama that surrounded his relationship with Electra. Some fans even imagine Dillon leaving Forrester altogether and joining the Spencers at Logan, proving her loyalty not only through words, but through actions as well. That possibility gained even more excitement recently when Crew Morrow, who portrays Will, shared a social media photo with Sydney Bullock, who plays Dillon. The two actors looked remarkably natural together, and when Crew playfully asked fans whether they were ready for more scenes featuring Will and Dillon, the response from many viewers was overwhelmingly enthusiastic. If that excitement reflects where the audience's heart truly lies, then perhaps the future is already becoming clear. While Electra can continue venting her frustrations alongside RJ, Will may finally have the opportunity to leave the drama behind, embrace a healthier future, and discover what a truly supportive relationship actually looks like.